Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, and today we'll be tackling one of those frustrating driving annoyances, and that is squeaky brakes. Yes, on the Polo GTI that I own, I've had this annoying squeak now from the rear disc brakes that when you reverse or slightly move forward, there is a high-pitched squeak that sets all the dogs in the neighborhood wild. So I'm going to be showing you how to quickly and effectively solve it, and it's nothing too strenuous, it's not too hardcore in terms of tools required, so let's get out there and I'll show you how to do it. Welcome everyone to my VW Polo GTI model year 2019, and we're going to dive straight in. So this is a front wheel drive car. I need to release the handbrake for the rear wheels, which is where I'll be working on the problem of the squeaky brake. So I need everything free and easy to remove and spin while I'm working on that. So it's good to chock the front of the car on this particular model. And likewise, if you're doing a similar thing on front or rear wheel drive, it's good to just chock the wheels, make sure nothing rolls away while you're working on it. It's not good fun. And next is just getting the car jacked up. So as you can see, very cheap and simple jack here. I think this one's a 2-ton rating, 1.5 ton rating. So as I say, you don't tend to need any exciting tools on this one. It's very straightforward. Try and find the jacking points if you can. Most cars are listed online in some way, front and rear. But if you can't find one that fits, then I recommend where the control arm for the hub and the wheels connects to the body. It's usually a pretty solid place to lift the car, and never had any issues or trouble there. It's made out of pretty strong materials, and the bolts that they use across these members tend to be pretty strong as well. So next is just a jack stand. It's always very important to consider all the safety aspects. Jacks are very reliable and tend to be very solid, and many people use all sorts to lift things, but like with anything, if it does fail, you don't want it coming crashing down on you or anything around you that can cause any type of injury. So I highly recommend using the jack stand in alignment with the jack itself. So as you can see, I'm just placing it under what is a cross member on the rear suspension for the Polo. It's a nice easy place to let the weight of the car be carried by the jack stand, which I've just rested on there. And then I just give a little tiny lift on the jack, just so that they hold the weight between them, really. So that just is an extra bit of safety. So now the car's jacked up, we can start to think about removing the wheel. And I've got these cool little dust covers for my wheel nuts. Just helps protect them, because exposed wheel nuts, certainly in the weather we have here, tend to rust up and stuff. So it's a nice little touch. It makes the car look generally a bit better as well. So from that perspective, highly recommended. You get a nice little tool that sort of slides in around the cover, and it's got 2 little clips, and literally you pull. Just sizing up the nuts here. I think they're 17mm on this particular car. So as you can see, the stud remover bolt that I have there, which I'm using, comes with a nice sort of plastic covering, so it doesn't ruin your wheels when you're trying to remove them. I'm using the XR 18 volt impact gun there. It's my friend on all my jobs that I do with cars, and Yeah, like I say, it's a nice to have for me, but you can use any sort of wheel nut remover tool. Even the one that comes with the toolkit with most cars, I mean, is adequate. So once you got the car in the air, it's easy for an impact gun to remove the bolts. I recommend, if you're not using an impact gun of some sorts, that you just crack off the bolts while the car is on the ground before you jack it up, because then it's much easier for the bolts to be removed. As you can see, I'm fighting with the wheel now. Off it comes, and that is mainly because around the hub there you can see there's a little bit of rust, and if the wheels haven't been off in a long time, then yeah, they tend to get quite close to the hub and seize on a little bit. So we'll address that before we put the wheel back on with a bit of grease and so on. So now you've got access to the disc itself. I always put the wheel under the car just in case, you know, it's just force of habit, just making sure that things are safe as possible. And then we do a bit of cleaning. And if you haven't removed the wheels, or if the brakes haven't been touched for a long period of time, you tend to find that brake dust build up and dirt and grime is unfriendly for brake systems. And certainly right now in the middle of winter for us, we get a lot of salt on the road, so it's always good if you have the time and effort to clean the underside of your car and the brakes and the wheels in particular, just because they don't tend to get on well with salt and grime and dirt like that. But anyway, we've got full access now, and this particular setup I have, or this caliper unit that I have here, you can see that it has 2 bolts that I'm undoing now, and rubber boots just inside of where those bolts tie in. You can see there are sliding pins, so the unit itself slides in and out on the caliper bracket, and it's a general type of caliper that is used quite widely across many vehicles and brands, with the sliding pins. Some don't have those types of sliding pins, and they'll be fixed in a slightly different way. But with this one, what's interesting as well is you have the handbrake unit attached to the back of the caliper as well. So sometimes you have units like on my LR4, you have the handbrake going into a central hub, or within the disc there's a hub that will have the traditional brake shoes and stuff that you have for a handbrake mechanism. This one's slightly different. So no headaches here. It really is just removing 2 bolts, and when you get those bolts removed, it gives you the freedom then to remove the caliper and get access to the pads. And again, depending on the types of units that you have, there might be certain hardware you might have to remove, but on this one it's pretty straightforward. It's quite easy. And as I was saying, again, the tools I'm using, just a couple of spanners on this particular case, one that's holding the pin nut from spinning, and the other one that just undoes the bolt. You see that they both have a little bit of blue Loctite on them as well, which is generally the case when you're using bolts on brake systems. Here, you know, I'm trying to force this one off, but generally what you have to do is just give the piston a little push back, and I recommend that you use the back of the pads, so where the hard material is. You don't want to be trying to force things apart on the brake material itself, because you don't want to damage that. Certainly if you're going to be reusing the pads, as I am in this case, if you're not and you're changing pads that they're worn and destroyed, then yeah, knock yourself out and find a pry place wherever you need to, just to force that piston back slightly, and there you go. Only takes a little bit of effort to push it back and give you enough room to slide the unit off. Usually you can cable tie these units up and just make sure they don't hang, but in this case it's not hanging on the brake fluid pipe, which is generally the case on a lot of calipers. I've got the added advantage of the handbrake cable there at the top of the unit being in place and taking most of the weight, so I wasn't too worried with hanging it up. And as you can see, we now have access to the brake pads, and they have built-in sort of spring clips, which are really useful. Some cars have different hardware, but these are super easy. And as you can see, there's lots of material left on my particular brake pad. But there you go, you can see the difference in colour between the exposed part of the pad and the part that's been against the actual caliper itself and being forced when braking, and likewise this one. You see how dirty they are as well. So these are all the sort of effects of weathering, the pad material or the backing plate material starting to degrade a little bit, and this is generally the cause for why pads start to squeak. And so yeah, the fix is pretty simple, and as you can see, I'm just cleaning up, getting all the dirt. So the first thing is clean the backing of the pad as best as possible, get rid of any dirt, grime, anything that might be foreign material that you do not want against the backing plate and the unit of the caliper itself. You want that as that mating surface to be as good and clean as possible. I'm just checking to make sure that everything is spinning as it should, and I'll do a bit more cleaning. Highly recommend getting brake cleaner. I think you can get a good amount of cans. They're 500ml cans, so good big cans that generally do quite a lot as one can on a job if you were doing a full brake system and stuff. And you can get sort of a pack of 6 for 20 odd pound, I think it is. But very useful to have in the DIY garage at home, because they're not just good for brake systems, it's good for all sort of dirt cleaning on cars and stuff, in and around engines and so on. And as you can see, when I spray it on, it evaporates, dissipates very quickly, so it's very useful to get dirt and grime off and have the surface of the material that you're working with in a clean state. So there it is. That's the copper grease that I highly recommend. I've had that tin now for a few years, and you use it sparingly and it lasts for years. Really, really good stuff. It's called copper grease. It's built and made for braking systems, really for high temperatures that brake systems will endure in all sort of circumstances. And what's really great about this stuff is you sort of put it on, as I'm doing here, sort of spread it around sparingly, and then it sort of molds itself to the material that it's attached in itself to create like a nice smooth layer, and it becomes, the best way to describe it, almost weatherproof, right? It can be going through all sorts of scenarios, from wet, snow, dirt, rain, salt, and it will still stay intact. So I've used this on my LR4, and I did the brake systems on that, which I did a video on for the rear brakes, and that must have been 18 months ago, and the grease is still present. And this is the really good stuff about it, is that it really protects the back of the pad and the mating surface between the pad and the caliper, and alleviates the braking squirrel that you get. No more squeaks and any unwanted grinding and stuff that you might hear from a good brake system that's sort of grabbing fast and tight. Now, with most brake pads, there's always a way that they slot back in, and in this case, this is the first time I've done this on my particular car. In this particular case, I've learned that you come in at a sort of 45-degree angle with the clips, and then once you clip them in, you sort of pull the pad, or the back part of the pad, to the disc, and it slots in nicely. Each system will have a very similar way. They tend to design them so they slot in and out nice and easy. You just got to work out which way that is, and there you go. That one's now in. And then just applying a little bit more grease to the back to ensure I hadn't wiped any off while messing around with it, trying to get it into place. Yeah, making sure there's no grease on the surface of the disc, because that's important. So again, just giving it a quick wipe down, and then we'll move on to also the next pad. And what's good about this is a sort of job like I highly recommend you do at home. It's you know, if you've got these simple tools that I've just been talking about, it's good, one, if you want to learn to do this stuff, but two, you save yourself, you know, a good amount of money. So we haven't bought any parts other than the grease maybe that you'd have to go and buy if you haven't got some already. And you know, most garages are done, you know, by the clock and on a timer, so they don't tend to have time to clean as I'm doing around your caliper and around your disc. You know, they might spray brake cleaner on, which is you know, fair, but to get the inner workings of your caliper, you know, a bit of a clean up there. These are places that when you clean your car you don't tend to get a chance to clean unless you take them all off, as I'm doing now. So having a go at it yourself, if you think that most garages charge probably upwards of £150 up to £300 per hour depending on car and garage, this job might be a 30-minute job in a garage book, maybe 45 minutes. They might advise that you did get both done at the same time. You know, you're going to be saving yourself maybe £100-200, and plus you've done the job yourself, you've learnt a bit, and equally you've managed to clean, and you know, in places that maybe they wouldn't, as they're on the clock. So I highly recommend these simple jobs to have a crack yourself, and you know, don't be too put off that it's the brake system, because as you've seen, it's a couple of bolts, and as long as everything's put together is exactly the same way that you took it off, and you tighten everything down, you should be good to go. So there you go, you see the layer of grease, and it sort of evens itself out, even though I just put my fingerprints across it, and it's just fantastic stuff. So I highly recommend having a look around for that. And the other thing here is just you see me using a wire brush just to clean the surface of the piston. Pistons obviously go through a lot of work and a lot of different you know, scenarios with weather and heat and cold and stuff. So if you get a chance to just clean the surface, make sure it's mated perfectly to the pad. It's always worth doing. If you are using a steel brush like I'm doing, just be careful of the rubber booting around the piston as well, because it's there for a protective reason, and you don't want to damage that in any way. But once you've got that done, giving it a clean, because we've already pushed the piston back in, you should be able to just slide it back over the pads, because we haven't changed the pads. You know, there's not more braking pad material to make the pads wider. It's all the same size, everything's going back as it should. An extra clean here. Attention to detail, hey? But if you're going to do a job right, try and do it right the first time, and that's it. And ideally what this will now do is that the mating surfaces between the piston and the pads and the caliper will all go together nice and smoothly with the grease there in place. And as you apply the brakes in a spirited manner, you know, be it slowly or fast, you shouldn't get any type of sort of squealing or unwanted high-pitched noises from your brakes, and any grinding noise or anything like that. So that's it now. We've fitted the caliper back in place, and what it should do now is just slide up and down along with the bolts to line up the holes. It's a very, very simple process, as I said. And again, you could probably do this job in sort of under 15 minutes, maybe quicker, if you know what you're doing, how you're doing it, and you've got all the tools. Like I say, I've taken my time a little bit just to demonstrate all the bits on this particular video for anyone who's thinking of doing this to fix their squeaky brakes. Just making sure there's no more grease anywhere. And a little bit of a rev there from the bike passing by. But yeah, like I say, you don't tend to get too many options around cleaning the calipers in this way. So I'm just having a good old rummage around there with the cleaning cloth, and we'll get the bolts tightened up. And you can, like I say, get these bolts torqued down if you need to, but generally hand tight or arm tight is good enough. Like I say, again, the tools I'm using are just a couple of spanners here, so it's super easy, super simple. You've got a spanner set. Most calipers are like that. I think on BMWs and a few others they will have sort of star head bolts, so you might need to get star head ratchets or Allen key head bolt ratchet heads and stuff like that, but generally if they're just nut and bolt, it's nice and simple with a set of spanners. So yeah, we'll give that a full lockdown. We'll get that tightened up, hand tight, and that should be good to go. They won't be going anywhere. And the same with the bottom as well. The other good thing about doing this job, and in particular this case, that I've literally just greased the back of the pads, but this is the same process you would go through if you were changing the pads on your car. So, you know, if you've got any MOT advisories or stuff where they say, hey, brake pads are low, and you've got the tooling at home, then again, it's a very simple and easy job just to change brake pads. And as you can see, my discs on this particular car are in good condition. They're not lipped or anything like that, so they've still got a good amount of wear on them. So that's the bolts now tightened up and locked down. Just do a final clean off. I have to say, looks quite cool, the red calipers with the red body on this particular car. Of course, you can paint your calipers whatever colour you like. If you're into that sort of thing, it's quite a big thing to have coloured calipers these days, I guess. Just added a bit of grease there to the hub where the stud nuts go into, which hold the alloy wheel. And again, that's just to ensure that if I have to take the wheel off again, or anyone in the future, it just comes off a little easier. That saves having to kick the wheel as I did at the beginning. But ultimately, that is the job done now. So I'm just cleaning the inside of the alloy wheel before I put it back on again. These are the sort of things you can do when you've got it at home and you're doing it on the driveway, because alloy wheels inside of the wheel don't tend to get a chance to be cleaned. So it's just an option to do that. But otherwise, that's the job done. So, you know, we've taken, what, 10-15 minutes to do that. It's a pretty simple process if you've got a few spanners and a little bit of time, and you've got a driveway to potentially do it. I hope you've enjoyed this this demonstration, this sort of how-to video on just solving squeaky brakes. I do quite a few videos like this of sort of how-to, so if it is something that you like and you enjoy the content, please do think about subscribing and liking. It does help the channel out massively. And yeah, check me out on Instagram as well, because I post a lot of interesting stuff there around car meets and bits and pieces like that. But thanks for watching, thanks for following, and you know, if you get a chance to subscribe, thank you very much for subscribing. And the next video will be along very soon.